So the next dish that we like to taste is from Dorian.
I'm feeling confident. The flavors are definitely there, but I'm anxious because it's so outside the box of the traditional way that I would display a cake.
Dorian, please describe your dish.
It is a lime olive oil cake with a whipped cream essence on top and a twill with olive oil and powdered sugar at the bottom.
It's a fantastic dessert. It's lemony, it's light, it's moist at the same time. It's a well-executed, delicious dessert in an interesting presentation.
Thank you.
When you got the olive oil cake, that rich, maybe a little drizzle on there, lemon drizzle, because you got that powder as well, so it's sort of dry, so you get that contrast and lift that. But honestly, it looks like it's just come out of a top restaurant.
Thank you.
It looks like something that we would do at Alinea. It really does.
Oh,
Won't
man.
get any better than that.
That's a nice compliment.
Can you imagine?
This is pretty unique. You need to understand that.
Yeah.
Well done.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
After moving the mixer up and down a couple times and forgetting that I'm making an olive oil cake where I don't need a stand mixer, I'm a little thirsty. So I'm gonna grab a quick drink. In my fridge, we're making something sweet, so I'm gonna get a pineapple cider. I got it in my fridge here, and we're gonna sip on that as we make this cake. All right, guys, let's start off with the cake. We're gonna start off with a 1/4 teaspoon of kosher salt, and then from the world's slowest baking soda container, we're gonna pour a 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. We're gonna follow that up with a teaspoon of baking powder, and then we're gonna dump in 5 ounces of white sugar that I've already pre-measured. We're gonna give that a real quick whisk. After that quick whisk, we're gonna add in a pinch of lime zest, and then about a 1/2 tablespoon of lime juice. We're gonna add in a full egg next, and after that, we're gonna get to the olive oil. So let's take a minute here and talk about olive oil. The cake is called an olive oil cake. It's the main ingredient, and it's one of the main flavor profiles you'll see. If you're gonna spend money on anything, spend money on the olive oil. I got this from Central Market, which is kind of Texas's version of a Whole Foods. It was a little expensive. I think it was 30 bucks for the bottle, but it's worth every penny in the olive. Even though this is a quality bottle of olive oil, it has got to be one of the slowest pouring bottles of olive oil I've ever found. It's actually slower than the baking powder, or baking soda actually, that we had earlier. We're gonna put 5 ounces into this. After we pour the 5 ounces of olive oil in, we are gonna add a splash of an amaretto. You can use a Grand Marnier here if you want to, or anything else with aromatic style liqueur. I might drink the rest of this here in a little bit. I'm gonna go ahead and pour in 4 ounces of full flavor, full fat yogurt. You wanna use this instead of Greek yogurt. It'll give it a smoother consistency. After we get that in there, we're gonna mix it real quick. Once we get the consistency of a batter very nice and smooth with all the lumps out, we're gonna pour this into a sheet. You wanna make sure you're either using parchment or you've buttered or greased your sheet pan. I use some butter here on this sheet pan. I'm using a 1/4 sheet. If you're making a full cake, I would suggest doubling the batter size and using either a bundt pan or a springform pan instead. Once we had this in the oven on 350 for about 25 minutes, we let the cake cool on the cooling rack while still in the pan to bring everything down and to loosen the cake up a little bit before we attempt to flip the cake out of the pan onto the cooling rack. Now that the cake itself is done, we're gonna move on to the lemon twill. For the lemon twill, we're gonna take 6 tablespoons of sugar and 3.5 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. We're just gonna whisk that together real quick to mix it. Then we're gonna throw in a tablespoon of lemon juice, a teaspoon of lemon zest, about 3 tablespoons of melted butter, and 1/8 of a teaspoon of kosher salt. And then we're gonna mix that real good to get it well combined. All right, now we're gonna put all of this on a silicone baking mat on any size pan you would like to put this on. This is actually my second batch, as I learned some life lessons after doing the first one and turning it into a giant sheet of lemon twill instead of individual chips. You wanna pick up small pieces around 1/4 to 1/2 of a teaspoon in size, roll them out in your palm, and then put them onto the silicone baking sheet. You wanna smash these out pretty thin. They're gonna melt and spread a lot once you get this into the oven. Because of that, you also wanna have these about 3, maybe even 4 inches apart, depending on how big you make your chips. Because they're so thin, these guys cook real quick. So after, I believe in this one was 8 minutes, they come out. You want to peel these off individually from your silicone baking mat, and then using a roller, we're going to slightly bend them. Be very gentle, push on the sides. They break very easy. If they cool off a little bit, put it back in the oven for another minute. Some of the feedback from Gordon was that because of the powdered sugar and things on the cake, it was dry on dry, and he wanted a bit more moisture. So I came up with the idea of, hey, let's put some lemon caviar on this, or as I like to call them, little lemon babies. All we had to do was add 75 grams of lemon juice, 25 grams of water, 1.5 teaspoons of sugar. Mix that together until it comes to a boil. Pull it right off the stove. As soon as you pull it off the stove, we're gonna mix in 1.5 teaspoons of agar-agar. Once you have all the agar-agar dissolved, we're gonna take a pipette and we're gonna slowly squeeze it into freezing cold liquid. And I mean freezing. I had this in the freezer for about 2 hours prior to dropping the hot agar-agar lemon juice mixture into it. You can pick the size of your sphere. 1 drop is small, 2 drops is mostly what I used here. It's a good size. 3 drops will be a little bit bigger. Above 3 drops, you're getting in kind of a weird size. It may not cool all the way before the mixture hits the bottom of the glass. It's gonna ruin your caviar. When you've made all the caviar you wanna make, just quickly dump it through a fine mesh strainer, rinse it off under cold water, and then, as you see, we have a nice pile of lemon babies. They're gonna look great on our cake. All right, now we get to use the stand mixer. Lug it back on the table one more time, and we're gonna make the lemon whipped cream. To start this off, we're gonna take 2 cups of cold, make sure it's cold, heavy whipping cream. We're gonna follow that with 4 tablespoons of sugar and then 1 tablespoon of lemon zest. Then we're gonna put 4 teaspoons of lemon juice in, and we're gonna mix this. Start the stand mixer out on low. As the whipped cream starts to thicken, we're gonna keep bumping the speed up. Let's pull this off, and voila, you have beautiful lemon whipped cream. Next, we're gonna make the olive oil crumb. This is gonna be the base of the cake. Again, olive oil will be one of the main flavor components of this, so make sure you're using quality olive oil. We're gonna mix in 3 ounces of olive oil, and as you can see, it's still pouring slowly, hasn't sped up any. I might take a drill to this olive oil jug before I'm done with it. After you finish with the 3 ounces of olive oil, we're gonna add in 1 ounce of tapioca maltodextrin. Let's be honest, guys, I got no idea what this stuff is. I'm not gonna take credit for this recipe. I stumbled on this from molecularrecipes.com. With having a science background, I'm a fan of molecular gastronomy, so I figured, hey, why not? Let's put this together. This stuff is very light, so make sure you're gentle when you're whisking it or it's just gonna fly out of the bowl. Once it starts to come together, we're just gonna add a 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and then we're gonna pour this into a pan. You want this to be a mixture that's a little bit thicker than a whipped cream. You wanna keep with a spatula, you wanna keep mixing it and spreading it. Eventually it'll start to separate and crumb. And once you have some small and large pieces of browned olive oil, we're gonna pull this out and it's done. All right, guys, now that we've got all the components done, let's talk about plating. They used this really cool globe/bowl in the show. I found something similar and I'm gonna plate with it. Unfortunately, after doing this, I realized you really just can't show how you plate with this. So I'm gonna plate everything traditionally. To start off with the plating, we're gonna add a layer of the olive oil crumble on the bottom. You wanna even this out so that you have somewhere flat as well to place the pieces of cake. We're gonna add a quick sprinkle of confectioner's sugar on top of the olive oil crumble. And then we're gonna add our round circles of cake. We're gonna add a little bit of powdered sugar, just like on top of the olive oil crumble. And then we're gonna put a drizzle of actual olive oil on top of this. We're gonna repeat this one more time. Next, we're gonna grab a little bit of the whipped cream. After doing this the hard way with a spatula, If you have a pastry bag, I would suggest putting it into a pastry bag and squeezing it out. Let's just toss one of those lemon twills right on top. And then we're gonna sprinkle some lime zest on top. Just like in the whipped cream, I want it a little heavy here. I would suggest you just put a few little pieces on there to add pops of color to the dish. And then to finish it off, let's just put some lemon babies on here. So grab a spoon, shovel some lemon caviar, pile it up right at the base of the twill, and you have a beautiful dish and we're done. And as I promised, here's a quick snip of it plated inside of the black globe. Again, hard to show you guys, but it looks great that way as well. Thanks for watching, guys.